Welcome to my Wellness Spring podcast. In this raw, honest episode, I'm thrilled to chat with a lovely friend, Rhonda Hudson, a transformational guide and an architect of remembrance. We dive into truth, purpose, and what it really means to come home to yourself. Expect powerful insights, real stories, and moments that will make you pause. Tune in. This conversation might just shift something within you. Hi, Rhonda. Welcome to Wellness Spring. It's so lovely to finally have you on the show.
Thanks, Bev. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. I was thinking when we first started talking about doing this podcast, how long we've known each other. And I couldn't go back to the exact date, but I know it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a couple of decades because you and I know I first met you, I think, at one of Stars and Bars events when you and Kate Powers were running spiritual speakers giving talks. So that's how long ago it was.
What year do you think that was?
Well, I got to France in 2010.
Okay, so somewhere
So it
around
would have
that.
been, maybe a bit later. And it was funny because I always remember someone invited me to go there. Stars and Bars was being done up, and Anik and Martin Brofman had invited me, and he was giving a talk, but it was in La Castle, one of the bars on the front there, because and it was on Australia Day, which is January the 26th, and all these fireworks were going off, and I was like, oh my God. And Kate teased me and said, we do this every year to celebrate Australia Day because we love Australians. And it was actually for the Monaco Day the following day. So, and that was my introduction. I took loads of pictures of the video of the fireworks and posted them and said, wow, Monaco loves Australia. So, yeah.
And they do. I think Mom definitely loves Australia.
Yeah. We've had many fun times together, both on a personal level and professional level. And like me, you've done many, many things. So before we delve into it, I would like to, if you could share with the listeners, about how you were born in California and you now live in Monaco, and what it was like growing up and what education and your background and so forth, so they can get a good feel of the beautiful goddess you are.
Oh, well, thank you. So, I was born in Bakersfield, California. And I think out of all of the cities in California, Bakersfield is one of the only Republican cities. So I often laugh because everybody thinks that, California is very liberal. And then you have this very Republican city that's more, I don't know. It was a very incredible childhood. It was a childhood that allowed us to play on the streets. And it was a time in life where things really felt quite easy where I grew up. It wasn't a big city. We lived in the country. We had a farm, basically animals and a big garden and stuff like that. So my childhood was pretty amazing. And I think when I look back now, how I guess blessed I would say that I had such great parents raising me who let us go out and play and have imagination and experience really life from a child's perspective. And so that's always, really stayed with me. And then over the years of growing up in Bakersfield, California, moving to the Bay Area, going to school there, I went to a school called New College of California, and it's a science degree. I got a science degree. And then I was on my way to go to chiropractic school in Georgia. And so, in Atlanta, Georgia. And so when I was there for about 2.5 years going to school. And during this time, I was really crazy about journaling. I loved journaling. I've been journaling probably before that, but it was this like everyday journaling. And I would journal about anything, my feelings, my thoughts, my dreams, especially my dreams. And it was 2.5 years when I was there in school, and I had received this dream. And I was walking down this old cobblestone road, and I remember it so vividly. And it was just like walking down this road, I looked up and I saw a sign that said Niswa's Soka. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
I have no idea what that means. And my idea at this time, my best friend, who's still my best friend, but she lives in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, my idea for us was like, I'm going to get through chiropractic school. She's also a chiropractor, and we're going to move to Belize and open up a women's healing wellness center. That was just really my passion. I spent a lot of time in my 20s in Mexico with shamans doing different types of like ceremonies and sweat lodges and things like that. So I really felt a connection to Mexico, and especially Belize in the Tulum area. If you've ever been there, it's quite incredible. It has this like Mayan feeling. But anyways, not to get distracted. So I had this dream, and all of a sudden, it was like every day I had anxiety. I started talking to everyone, like, oh my gosh, I had this dream. Tell me about this dream. Telling everyone I met about this dream, really. And then finally, about 4 months after I had this dream, and it seemed like this anxiousness, this anxiety within me just kept building. So I was sitting at a bar in Atlanta, and I met this guy. We were just talking, and he was from Paris. And I mean, this is like when synchronicity and synergy and all of that stuff is really, it falls into alignment at the perfect times, right? And he was from Paris. He owned a nightclub, and I was telling him about the dream, and I told him about the two words I saw, and I couldn't even pronounce them properly, but he's like, can you write those down? So I went and got a bar napkin. I wrote the words down, and basically he goes, I think that's Niçoise Soka. That's like Nice, France. Now, this is 1999, so we didn't Google things. It wasn't something that we did very often. Like, we don't go on Google and look for everything, and now Chat GPT or whatever other AI is out there for us. We just kind of like, okay, it's a dream. We kind of follow whatever came up for us. But when he said just go onto Google and look, I immediately left and went home. And I found out that it was Niçoise Soka was Nice. It's a food that comes from Nice, France. And I called my parents and said, look, I'm going to quit school, and I'm going to move to France. And you can imagine their surprise, because at this time I was 29, and they're like, finally, she has a path. She knows what she wants to do. And here everything's like thrown up in the air. And, for them, it's like, oh no, here she goes again. She's going to be off moving to Europe, and she doesn't know anyone, and she doesn't speak French and all of this stuff. So it took a few months for me to get everything pulled together, and I got on a plane and I actually came to Nice.
Oh my God, that's an amazing story. And yeah, Brian, my partner, got a pull to go to France because he'd been there while working on the yachts. And we fell in love with it. And the first place that we ate in France, in Nice, was Chez Remy, the home of Niçoise pizzas. So for the listeners, it's actually like a pizza made of chickpea flour, and you cook it in a pizza oven, and it is to die for. And I've taken all my visitors there. So, wow, I'm sure your parents were shocked that you were just up and leaving and not finishing your chiropractic training. So what did you do when you got to Nice?
I cried. I cried a lot because it was such, as an American, the culture is completely different than coming to the French culture and the French Riviera. And I think I was a person who was very open to meeting, people. And here I didn't know how to do that. One, I didn't speak French. The second, I didn't know anyone here. So I was kind of just like going, okay, why did I do this? But there was that strong drive to get me here. And I cried. It took about a year. And I'm also very thankful. And I want to explain a little bit about this because when we're born, are rehearsed. It's like I've been given a name. I was rehearsed that name, and Rhonda should behave this way, and Rhonda should, be like this or respond like this. And so through our lives, we kind of go through this rehearsal. And when I got here, because I didn't understand the culture, people didn't talk to you really, you needed an introduction. No one really smiled a lot, and I was just like, it was kind of like a culture shock. Like, why would I ever move to France? This does not feel well. I should have just went to Mexico. But what it did is it really allowed me to slow down. And when I arrived, it was on Saturday, like at 12 o'clock or 12:30, all the stores were shut. The grocery stores were shut. Now, I'm coming from an American California attitude. It's like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have availability to whatever we want. We can eat when we want, Here, it's like, no, you eat from 12 or 12:30 to 2 or 2:30, and dinner doesn't start until 7. 8 o'clock. So I was like unwinding and unraveling all these programs that I had in me. I didn't realize that that's what was happening when I got here, but that's where the crying came from, because I had rehearsed who Rhonda was for, almost 30 years. And then I got here and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't just slot into a culture and everything was perfect and fine. It was kind of like, now I get to discover who I am. And that was a big turning point for me. And to discover who I truly was, I had to let go of a lot of beliefs that I had about myself, if that makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you were very blessed to come to that understanding about your beliefs, because most people bury them with them, and they don't realize who they truly are at their core, a divine being of love and light. And I think sometimes that saying, you have a breakdown to break through, it was very confident. You're a very strong, courageous lady to leave your home and the known. And ego would have been trying to stop you to change countries. And back in the day, for ladies like us, it wasn't the seen thing. It wasn't the done thing. Now everybody's traveling. The youngsters take a gap year and so forth. Yeah. But I left home at exactly the same age, at 29, for my big traveling. I'd gone to Bermuda at 23, but, I was still close to home, and then started my big journey. So, and it's good that you said a turning point, because we all have turning points. And you mentioned slowing down and being still, and it's in the stillness we find our greatness, and we can tap into that beautiful life force source energy. So you mentioned you've trained in science, and I know that you've trained in energy medicine and breathwork, because I've been to some of your lovely classes, and Kundalini yoga. Yet you say that life taught you the most, teaches you the most. So do you have any other pivotal moments that you could share? For example, a challenge, a loss, or love that reshaped how you see your purpose in life?
I would say I have probably 1,000 stories I can share, because I think that it seems like there's been so many of those pivotal moments, like kind of states of consciousness that play out and have been incredible teachers. But I'm going to share something just recently that's really close to me. And this was what has really shaped who I am in this moment. And this was my dad and him having a crisis, a healing, I've been now in Monaco for the last 26 years. So I've been away from home, my family, my mom and my stepdad live in California. My dad was still in California. My brother's in Puerto Rico. So when my dad ended up having a health crisis, being so far away was very, very challenging. And so going through this, and that was in 2021. So we were just finishing COVID, and there was just a lot of uncertainty. There was so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
But when my dad first had this health crisis and I was able to fly over, I think I was one of the very first flights that came over from Europe to the States. And I remember arriving and just feeling like, wow, there's been so much shift in the world, and being able to come and, see my dad in a place where it was like I wasn't sure he was going to wake up or not wake up. And he was in like a semi-coma, not induced at all. It was just something that was self-induced by him through this episode that he went through. And this has been a really incredible journey for me. And we've been walking this journey now since 2021. And I was just in California last year with him. And so he's been diagnosed with dementia. It's called Lewy bodies dementia. And if anyone doesn't know what Lewy bodies dementia is, if you know who Robin Williams is, he's a really, people can relate. They know since he was an actor and definitely had a big presence in this world. He also suffered from Lewy bodies dementia. And Lewy body is really where your realities, well, the way I look at it, it's like being on LSD, probably like 24/7. So if you've never been on, that means like you're just having all these different realities, hallucinations, or different types of perspectives going on. But on this, it never turns off. It's just constant, And yes, they can try to control it with medication and everything like that. But it's this super active brain that's seeing things from so many different realities or perspectives. And I think eventually over time, that activity starts to break the nervous system down, and it's almost like the nervous system can't hold that energy any longer. And so Robin Williams was diagnosed with Lewy bodies dementia. My dad's diagnosed with Lewy bodies dementia. So when I was back last year, we had this moment where he had just had another one of his episodes. He ended up in the hospital, and my girlfriend Carrie flew down to help me out. And we're walking. We decide we really want to take my dad out to breakfast. He's getting better, and so we take him out to breakfast. And he's only 10 minutes from his memory care because that's where he's located right now. And this is in Carlsbad, California. And so we're driving to the breakfast place, and he's like, oh my gosh, I need to go to the bathroom. And one thing that happens a lot is that the body starts to lose control of a lot of its function, And I'm like, okay, so he's currently wearing diapers. And so I get him out of the car, and Carrie jumps to the driver's seat, and we're walking him through this brand new restaurant that has just opened. And, he can't hold it. And it's like, if you can imagine, as we're walking, it was probably 50 feet, maybe 60 feet in front of the kitchen and to the toilet. And it's like, when a dog leaves its droppings down the sidewalk? Well, that's kind of the experience that my dad, he just couldn't hold it any longer. And there's like these poo droppings that are going down, the whole way leading to the bathroom. And It was a really incredible moment. It was very challenging because you have to go in and think, oh my God, the restaurant's packed. We're walking through all of the staff, walking back. He can't control himself. I'm like, how do I respond? How do I react here? You know? And I think this was just another one of those moments where it's like you get an opportunity here to freak out, stress out,
Yeah.
or you can pull in all these tools of what life gives you and say, how do I want to show up in this moment right here, right now? So getting my dad into the toilet, saying, please try not to touch too much, because at this time, I mean, he had let everything go. It was all over his clothes, his shoes, like on his hands, because he kept trying to grab everything. I'm leaving him in the bathroom, running back out, saying, oh my God, to the manager, how can I clean this up? And this was such an incredible moment because I was feeling embarrassed, you know, like, how do I
Mm.
respond to this? There's a part of me that felt embarrassed, like, oh my God, I felt sorry because here, you know, this is a restaurant and it's like there's poo all the way leading down to the restroom. And so it was such a beautiful time of that connection with humanity, because the manager showed up and she just said, I've got this. Just go take care of your father. And she called her staff
Oh.
in, and it was incredible. I mean, Beverly, this was one of the most human connections that I felt in at such a deep level. It's like, wow, she just looked me in the eyes and said, wow, okay, you know what? Let me get this part. You just go take care of your dad. And, you know, I had to go in and clean my dad up. And the funny part of the story is that he had, you know, his clothes were totally soiled, and we just sat there and I'm like, how am I going to get him out of this bathroom situation? And I went running back
Mm.
up to her and she's like, well, I mean, we can put him in a trash bag. So you can imagine, here my dad, we
Mhm.
two holes in the bottom. I put his legs through, and you know, and it was a green trash bag, and we put his arms through the trash bag, and he's walking out, and he looks like a green M&M, and it's really comical because you know what, life sometimes in these very challenging situations, there can be some comedy, some lightness to it. And so that was one of like a recent challenge that I remember, because there was a whole flux of emotions that went through. There was parts of me that felt like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed that this has happened. But then there were those other parts that said, how do you want to show up? Not only for your dad here, but for yourself and for the people here, you know? And it gave me an opportunity to remember who I am and who I want to be in every moment.
Oh my God. That was a heartbreaking story that you related, and I got goosebumps because having been a psychiatric nurse, and also recently Brian's dad, my partner's dad for the listeners, had dementia. And yeah, it can be very demoralizing for the person suffering from it, especially in the beginning, because they're gradually their memories going, and they phase in and out of lucidity,
Mm.
and it's totally embarrassing, you know, for them. His dad said to me, you know, I know years ago I was, you know, bathing and cleaning my two kids, and now they're doing the same for me. And I remember you relating a story to me about your mum in the car and your dad. Do you want to share that? Because I
Oh,
think it's important.
I would
Yeah.
love to. So, we were just back in California in February. And so I was taking my dad back to his memory care. So we had rented this Airbnb and he was staying there during the day with us. It's really beautiful, like with an ocean view, Pacific Ocean view. And so my dad said he was ready to go back to his memory care. And my mom just chirped in, and my parents have been, I think, divorced for 24 years, something like that. And my mom said, "Oh, I'll come with you guys." And I'm very blessed because my parents are still very good friends. I'm not going to say good friends. They just show up in a way that has a lot of respect for each other. It's not like they hang out, but when I'm there, when my brother's there, my parents come together, and I have such an appreciation and gratitude for that. So here we are in the car, and so my dad's in the car, and I have him in the front seat, and my mom's in the back, and this last time that I was there, my dad has also gone through another phase where he really doesn't have any control over his bowels right now. And so it seemed like every single day, 3 or 4 times a day, we would go out and he would lose control and we would end up in the bathroom. I have a little bit more management under it now, but when we were in the car, my mom said something so cute. She goes, "Well, Larry, you remember you had to clean, you change Rhonda's diapers a lot when she was a little kid." And it was just like this moment of remember it, like that lucidity, and he said, "That's right. So really, this is like payback for all those stinky diapers that I had to change." And it just brought easiness and ease into the moment, and this appreciation between all of us sharing this moment of like, this connection that life is about giving and receiving, right? And even at these, it's like, wow, I get to show up for my dad, and my dad showed up for me. I don't remember him changing my diapers, but obviously they were very stinky. And here I am changing his diapers, and it was just this really fun moment, inclusive of both of my parents being together in a car, a very small space, laughing about, how my dad used to change my stinky diapers because my mom reminded him, and how it just brought so much light into that moment that now his daughter can show up for him and he can receive that. So yeah, it was really, really touching.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story because dementia is on the rise, as are many other motor neuron disease, both in adults and in children. It's the children especially, it's the highest time in history. So it's good, I think, for listeners to hear that, because a lot of people would have freaked out and been so embarrassed and never ever taken their dad anywhere again. So I think this will inspire people. And what you shared about the staff member, the manager, saying it's okay, I've got this, I got goosebumps, because it's all about talking, connecting at a human level and also a soul level. And from the day we were born, we're all on a journey of remembrance, remembering our sovereignty, our divinity. So I know, Rhonda, your mission talks about creating sacred spaces for remembrance. How did you discover that guiding others back to the truth, their calling, was your calling?
Well, I think the discovery of that is actually my just being aware in my own journey, of these times of contraction, expansion that takes place. I mean, that's really been my story, is how many times that I've seen myself go through challenges, go through just what life offers, and feel contraction when those challenges come up. And then also after that, being able to stay in the expansion that it offers too, when you're able to realize that you're not a victim in this. In this life journey, we're not victims. We're actually creating our stories. We're creating our journeys by every choice that we make, by every thought, every emotion, and every feeling. And that all of this is this incredible tapestry, this amazing tapestry that we get to weave throughout our lives. And this has been my work personally, and now through my personal work, I'm able to work with other people, and the joy that I get in seeing them thrive and understanding their tapestry and how they weave this beautiful tapestry, this very authentic self tapestry through their challenges. Because the one common theme I keep seeing is that this life isn't about perfection and everything's, positive and happy and great. The real part of life is through this tapestry of challenges that we get to meet and see and join and say, wow, okay, how do I show up here? How do I bring myself to this place and see all the opportunity that is in this challenge? And, a lot of times we don't see it at first, and it becomes reflections in our life. We look back and think, that's what that moment was about, or that's really what I learned from that. So it's not about always needing to know what the message, the lesson, or what the work is in the moment, but it's about giving ourselves the opportunity to just embrace and show up 100% in those moments, however it is. And maybe sometimes that's our shadow self. And maybe sometimes it's showing up with more awareness and more light and more love in our lives. And when I say love, because this word is used so freely, love for me is something that has no conditions and definitions. And this is really how I've been embodying this work, my journey, is that every time I feel like there's conditions set on something, and especially, or a definition, I know that I'm in a story and I'm not in the feeling of what love really is. And that's really kind of, I think, my mission, my journey, is to remember what love is in every moment that I possibly can, and live those moments with such joy and excitement and inspiration.
That's wonderful. And I think, there's many of us today who are on similar pathways, and our job is to bring more light and love into the world by leading through our heart instead of our mind. And Rhonda, how do you help people to recognize that they're stuck in the past, stuck in their stories, stuck in their disempowering beliefs like doubts and fears and, those thoughts that are not good enough? You mentioned that we don't have to be perfect. So how do you help people?
I think a really incredible tool I love to use is letting people understand that they can give themselves permission. This is one tool I love, because when you give yourself permission, just fill this out for a moment. When you give yourself permission, what do you feel? It's like, oh, wow, I'm letting myself off the hook, right? I'm giving myself be angry right now. I'm giving myself permission to feel guilt if I'm feeling guilt. I'm also giving myself permission to be happy, to have joy, to fall off my path, or be really, diligent on my path. And I love this tool. I love this tool a lot because there's softness in it. And the way that I love working with people is helping them identify with a softer version of who they are. And that's one tool I love playing with, is giving permission.
Wow, that's powerful. And for people listening who want to find their soul's purpose, pathway, destiny, whatever you want to call it, what's one simple step that they could do today to start remembering who they truly are?
So one step. Let me just see what flows in. So I think when we're trying to remember who we really are, I often like to have the people I work with listen to their body, because like you said, really where we feel our soul, where we feel our purpose is in our heart. And it's so easy for us. I mean, I have 1,000 books. If you came into my house, you would see my bookshelf, and I have 1,000 books, and I've read so many things through my life. But it was only when I was able to embody those things did I really understand how to connect to my purpose, right? When I was letting myself. And so if there's one way that I like to remind myself of my purpose, or and this doesn't have to be something like, oh, this is my life's purpose. It can be what my purpose is for today. Like it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
so right or so big, like, oh, I don't know what my life's purpose is. Well, I kind of feel like our life's purpose is constantly changing throughout our life. And especially because we live so much longer now and we have the ability to live longer now. But what I love to do, even on a daily basis, is how do I show up for myself today with an intention that excites me? How do I show up? Because when I ask myself that every morning, like, how do I want to show up today? What do I want this day to look like? This is a way for me to connect to my soul. And maybe today is like, ooh, I want to write my book. Maybe today is, I want to go take a walk. Maybe today is like, I really want to address those hundreds of emails I have in my inbox, But this is a really great way for me to connect what my purpose is on a very practical level, if that makes sense. And when we do that, it's just like in those moments, we're just aligning. And then something bigger comes from that. And I always see that there's more when we make those little micro, steps of like just aligning to that soul purpose by our intention and feeling that in our body. And we know that when we're in alignment, because our body doesn't feel tense or it doesn't feel tight, it doesn't feel restrictive or resistant, our body feels like soft and free and flowy. And then it's like, wow, okay, this is my life's purpose in this moment. So I'll set an intention and I'll go do this. And this feels exciting for me, or I feel inspired to do this. And it really brings softness, because I think a big part of living our purpose is that we go through so many shifts and changes. And sometimes our soul's purpose, there's a lot of intensity, and we can really move into those intense moments. And then we can move into those soft moments. And we can use our body as the vehicle or the gauge or the tool to let us know what we're listening to. What are we in a story?
Yeah.
Right? Or are we following our soul's purpose by just being in this present moment, using our breath? I love playing around with breath. I think breath is one of the biggest tools that we can play with. And it's even something of like taking a long, deep breath in, holding it for a moment, and then letting it go with a sigh, like, ah. And all of a sudden, that softness comes in. And you're like, okay, well, what do I feel like doing right now? And we can bring that into our jobs. If we have a 9-to-5 job or whatever we're doing in our lives, we can, show up for ourselves. Like, how do we want to show up today at our job? And even that,
Yeah.
we're connecting to our soul purpose in that. Just by that one question is like, how do I want to show up here? And
that's beautiful.
Yeah. It really like making it smaller instead of thinking, oh my God, what's my big life purpose, or what's my soul purpose? Because sometimes that feels a little bit overwhelming. It's just like really bringing it into like, how do I want to show up right here, right now, in this moment? And that right there is connecting you to your soul's purpose, your life purpose, by just doing that and watching how your reality unfolds. Because in that, there is so much more, and you'll start to see it. You'll get to experience it from here.
You explained it really well, Rhonda, because a lot of people will say, I don't know, what I'm holding on to, because we're living in a crazy, chaotic world at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty, and people hold on to stress. And as you started, like myself, doing massage, we know people hold stress in their body, in tight knots in their shoulders, for example, and they're totally unaware of it. So it's bringing that awareness and, knowing that if your body's feeling tight and all tense, you're not in alignment. And you're in that softness. And I truly believe that breath is the key to life. So do you want to let people know the work that you do with the breath work? Because it's very powerful.
Absolutely. So I just want to add one more point to what you just said. And I think what's really important in awareness is not about force. It's not about, oh my gosh, I need to change this or fix this. Often we do that in our lives. And I'm talking really about myself because I go into life and I'm
Yeah,
like, God, I need to fix this, or I need to change this, or I need to do something different. And it's really not about fixing or changing. It's really about like, how do I soften myself with the thoughts that I'm having? I don't need to fix them. I don't need to change them. And when we take force out of something, something automatically changes. It's kind of like thinking like this. It's like we don't think about digesting our food. Our food just digests, right? We're not telling ourselves or even
yeah,
taking breath, right? We're not, oh, I need to breathe. I need to remind myself to breathe. We're just breathing automatically. And when we can remember to not force things, not fix things, not try to change things, things start to become automatic in how we respond in life. And that's where the softness really flows in, is and where awareness really shows up for us. So let's go back to your question about breath. And what I love to do with breath is I have been playing around with breath, well, way before the 2000s. So I was introduced to Kundalini yoga in the early 1990s in Los Angeles, where breath really became a big part. Kundalini yoga is really, we have so many breath techniques in that yoga in itself, and we incorporate it through the yoga. You can have an entire Kundalini yoga class with only breath, right? However, when I'm working with breath, I like to be very playful with it. And it depends on the type of year, it depends on the month, it depends on the people in the room, how we can bring something like a conscious connective breath in, or we can bring in a holotropic breath, depending on really how we want to move the energy in the body. And breath is really about that. It allows us to move energy. And that's why I love it, because we don't know what gets trapped in the body. Like you said, doing massage work and doing these different types of things, you feel the tissue and the tissue feels tense and it feels tight and it builds up. That's in the muscles that we're feeling. That's in the fascia that we're feeling. Imagine what's going on in a deeper, even more eternal, internal place, but also energetically, right?
yeah,
Energetic, what's going on. And so when we use breath, we're able to move so many different things from an energetic perspective, from an internal perspective, and even from a fascia perspective. And when we do that, we just feel lighter. We are able to release things. I think, I don't know who said this exactly about breath. Maybe it was Dan Brule, or I'm not sure, but there's a link to one breathwork session, which could be anywhere from like an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours, can allow you to have 32 hours of psychotherapy, because you're dropping in to the subconscious, right? And in the subconscious,
yeah,
you don't know what's playing, because they say we have around 72,000 thoughts a day, right? But if you think,
yeah,
God, can I remember the last 10 thoughts I just had? Most of us can't. Maybe we can remember 20 if we're lucky. But the most important thing here, it's not about remembering the thoughts. It's about understanding that a lot of the thoughts are repetitive and they go somewhere. And where are those 72,000 thoughts going? So with breath, it's like this conscious awareness unconsciously of letting the breath come in and release those unwanted thoughts that get stuck, and that's why I love working with breath, because a lot of times you don't have to think about what you're doing. You're just releasing, and what needs to be released does get released. And that's the beauty of breath work for me.
yeah. I totally agree. And I like to say to people, you you don't need to know what traumas you're holding on to. When you do the breath work, you just release them anyway.
Yeah.
And you know you've let go because you feel so much lighter. And I liked the way you spoke about intention earlier, because people forget to make plans when they're busy. And, you know, just one simple thing to say, today I intend to be more consciously aware of where I'm holding tension, or am I grinding my teeth, or do I feel I'm clenching my fists, and simple things like that. To be, am I snapping at people, am I irritable, and then you know you're not in alignment. So Rhonda, looking back on everything you've experienced, the highs, the lows, the deep inner work, what is one piece of work that you, piece of wisdom, I should say, that you could whisper to your younger self that you wish you'd known then?
Oh, let's see. Oh, there's so much. But I think to remember that we are allowed to grow and shift. So if I was talking to my younger self, I would be saying to that younger self, just like, take it easy. We're not in a rush, really. I think a lot of my life, I was rushing to get somewhere. And that was like my spiritual seeking path. So I was rushing to be awakened, to be enlightened, or to have a different perspective. I was always feeling like this rush within inside me. And so I would definitely say that it's really about, little Rhonda, remember to allow yourself to grow and shift. And I think another thing would be like, there's no rush. Just invite presence into as many moments as you can remember to invite presence into. And let yourself soften. Give yourself that invitation to soften and really allow little Rhonda to hear what she has to say, not squashing her down, but letting her have that voice and that connection and that relationship. Because I think something that I personally did throughout my life is I didn't align with that inner soul of Rhonda, that little Rhonda, if you want to call it that. And I think now looking back and talking to her, I would say, I want to listen to you and I hear you, and I honor you. I honor you because you are here to help me stay in that alignment and, help me remember who I am and what I came to experience in this life.
Well, that's really beautiful. And you've talked about journaling. Do you want to tell us about your up and coming book, for example, that I know you're doing?
Yes, I'd love to. I'm not going to give away the title. My publisher said
Okay.
we can't do that yet. But this is a parallel journey between the daughter, which is, of course, me, and her father, and how we have been able to use Alzheimer's and dementia as this pivotal point at these times in our lives where it becomes an awakening for both of us throughout this journey, a remembrance where we get to bring in all of these tools that I've collected over the last 30 some odd years, and be able to play with them. And it becomes this really incredible opportunity for this daughter to walk this journey with her father. And as he goes through this time of being lucid, not lucid, hallucinations, episodes, challenges, and she feels these challenges. I mean, it's pretty intense. Some of these challenges are quite intense, right? It's like, wow. But it's really like how she shows up through this parallel journey, and they explore humanity through Alzheimer's and dementia, really, and honoring what memory and connection can do during these times, and how to stay present through this journey, and knowing that every single moment of this life has purpose.
Wow, that's truly amazing. Because so many people, you know, as I mentioned earlier, they block their journey, but for you to write a book about it is pretty awesome. And Rhonda, I'm looking at you, and I know in earlier talks, one thing I always remember about you is your beautiful long hair. And I always remember you wearing hats. Every time I seen you, you'd always have a hat. But you had this amazing, beautiful long hair. And obviously we stay in touch and following your story. But I was so shocked when your hair started getting shorter and shorter. And now you've shaved it off. It's
Now it's like, yes,
it's
there's not a lot
yeah.
there. I mean, there's a lot of hair, but not, it's short. It's really short. Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell the listeners the story behind that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So the story behind the hair, and it's a long story, so I'm going to try to keep it really short as possible. But as I've been going through this parallel journey with my father, I've also been experiencing plant medicine and also purification processes. And through this, there's been this deeper awakening and understanding of Rhonda and what her purpose is. And as this last year, well, it's been a couple years. I keep getting this message, this voice inside saying it's time to shift. It's time to allow a new Rhonda to come in, and that new Rhonda has to let go of everything that she's attached to. And I kept saying, but no, not my hair, and I was just like, I don't want to cut my hair. I love my hair. But as I was starting to go through this process and starting to let go of these attachments, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, these rehearsed parts of who Rhonda was, so that Rhonda could show up for the most authentic part of who she is. But you don't know who you are until you can let go of everything. It's kind of like that birth, rebirthing. It's kind of like metamorphosis. You come into this like form that feels heavy, like the caterpillar, right? And you cocoon
Yeah.
yourself. And I think this process was my cocooning. It was this process of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to let go of everything that I believe that I am to really show up in my most authentic self. And as I was going through this like cocooning and stuff, a part of the voice was like, okay, you've done so well letting go of all these stories that you believed you were, these programs that you had bought into, and this unraveling and unwinding of what I would call self-identification. And so throughout all of this, I had heard this voice saying, okay, it's time to start, you need to let go of the hair and your attachment to this. And this isn't for everyone. This is just my story about like how I was very attached to my hair and I loved it. And it defined me in a way. Like you said, you always saw this long, beautiful hair. And over the last few years, that voice kept getting stronger. And there was a point where I think it was after one of my Kana journeys, it was like, it's time. It's time to let go of every definition that you had. So love and light can really move through you, and that you can step into this presence of letting God meditate you. So it's like, it's time. And so this last September in 2025, I turned 56, and it was this pivotal time of 5 and 6 equaling 11, and 11 kind of being a renewal number for me. And I heard this voice saying, it's the 40 days to resurrection. And in this, you're going to shave your head on your birthday. And let's celebrate this. Let's really celebrate this moment. And I'm like thinking, shave my head. I thought we were going to cut my hair, not shave my head. But when I go back to it, it was like really letting go of the last parts of those beliefs that I was holding on to that identified the Rhonda before, so that I can now step into creating and being, more than creating, really being the the Rhonda I came here to be. And so that's what the shaving of the head became, is like, it was this moment of like, you know, letting go of that attachment that I had with the hair. I think monks do this a lot. They keep their head shaved, you know, and there's a lot of like reasons that they do that. And you can look this up online and see why people shave their head. But it was really a renewal for me. And it was a renewal for me to be able to live my most authentic self. And that's why I ended up doing 40 days of resurrection, each day going through this part of letting go of the stories that I had created about myself, letting go of the thoughts that I believed, the emotions that I was still carrying. And I was doing this daily work up to those days that led to my birthday, where I ended up creating this incredible ceremony where I invited like 20 some odd people to come and share and actually shave my head with me. You know, like they actually took the razor and started shaving and stuff like that. And in that moment, my body felt a freedom. You know, and I'm sure I'm still unraveling what that freedom still is as I show up for myself every day. You know, we were talking earlier about an intention. Well, an intention for me is kind of, it's like, this is one of the most important things that I do every single day, is set that intention of how I want to show up for myself, and in that, how that shows up for others. And so when I shaved my head, it was like setting that intention of allowing myself to be authentic, the most authentic part of who I can be. And that just goes into my daily practice now, you know, letting go of that
amazing.
of my hair. And you know what I have to say? The minute it happened, I was free. It was like I was baptized.
Wow.
You know, I went through this baptism of like, oh my gosh, I'm free. And it made me able to really understand what probably baptism meant in the Bible, is like, it's like cleansed, you're washed away of all that identification that you have attached yourself to. And you get this fresh start of being able to create from this perspective and this story that you want to create from.
Wow. And what type of things were you doing to let go? Were you journaling and burning things, or what were you actually doing?
I was allowing myself to, one, I got up every morning, which I do. This has been a practice I've had for such a long time, but I would allow myself to just show up in the way of like, how do I feel today? But not like how I should feel, like, how do I feel? Does today feel heavy?
Wow.
You know, does today feel maybe challenging because I was up during the night dealing with my dad, or maybe I was feeling pressure because I wasn't showing up 100% for my clients at certain times during all of this time in my life that my dad started with the dementia. My best friend in Monaco, you know, was diagnosed with cancer, and she transitioned in August of 2021. So there was like all these things, and I allowed myself to really go through those feelings and those emotions without trying to fix them or change them, letting them just be there, and like letting myself and every aspect of me have a voice. So I think a part of it was like journaling. A part of it was just allowing me to feel the emotions and not try to fix them and not try to change them or shift them or say, "Ooh, I'm spiritual and I should feel this way." No, it's like, I'm spiritual and I feel this way. You know, like that's a different environment that you step into. You're like, yeah, this is a part of this journey of spiritualness, if you want to call it that, is like just showing up how you are in the moment and allowing yourself to be in that space. And of course, you know, there's so many beautiful things that we could do, like scripting, revisions. I love revisions. Little do-overs that you get to have. And revisions, I learned a lot about this through Neville Goddard and also Byron Katie. She does a lot of revision work. It's not called revision, but you get to turn it around. You know, like you get to turn her work around. And so I allowed myself to really play with all these tools that I've collected over the years and, do the revisions, do these little minor do-overs, do Byron Katie's work, allow myself to feel really, and then be playful. During the
Yeah.
resurrection, I got to be really playful. And a lot of the playfulness is like, what do I want to do? I want to draw. Well, let's draw my emotions today. Let's draw or let's build something. What do I want to build? And I would even go out, and because we're so lucky and I'm really close to the sea, I could walk out, and our sea doesn't have like a sand beach. It has rocks and pebbles, as you know, Bev. And so it
Yeah.
was, what do I want to build here? And I would just like be creative. And something a shaman taught me, and this beautiful shaman that I worked with, her name was Nikki. She's like, okay, well, why don't you go out in nature and create a nature painting? So it would be even little things like that, like going wherever I could find nature and collecting what was in the area and just saying, what am I painting today? Because this is what I'm feeling. And nature is giving me everything that I need to paint out the feeling, the emotion that I'm having. So I really love to bring playfulness in because I think life can be so serious. And I think a lot of my life has been so serious that now I like to see the softer side of Rhonda, and a lot of that's playfulness. Really bringing that in. And that was a part of the 40 days of resurrection, is how playful can I be today?
Wow, that's beautiful. And yeah, I truly believe nature is the best healer and teacher.
Mm.
And it's like a painting in itself, when you talked about painting. And as this is a health and wellness show, what is your number one health and wellness go-to?
Ooh, my number one health and wellness go-to. Well, I'll say now it's really me. I'm the one. I have let go of any concepts of like, this is good for me or this is bad for me. I've had a long journey from vegetarian, vegan, raw foodist to eating meat to now in my life, what I really feel is my most authentic self is just like listening to what feels right for me in this moment. And that's my go-to. That's my wellness go-to is like, hey, Rhonda, what feels right for you? And I love to allow myself to explore what that really feels like. And maybe today it's eating a piece of meat, where I would have said a year ago, no, I'm going to really stay with my vegetarian, feeling and stuff like that, because I had ideas wrapped around that. And now I really just listen to what Rhonda needs and I show up in that way for her. And a lot of times that's just checking in moment to moment to what feels right, and not giving something a label. I think I really have been able to, my wellness steps for me is like, I'm not going to label anything anymore. I just want to show up and feel what it feels like. And that's more playful for me personally.
Yeah, it's playful for me as well. So we're on the same wavelength. And, we didn't come here to heal and fix and save. We came here to play and have fun and experience life through our senses. So, Rhonda, if there was one thing that you could do to either change or make an impact on the world, what would it be?
I'm going to go back to living your most authentic self. If there's one thing that I can do for the world, it's really about taking responsibility of knowing that I am the creator of every experience. And when I do that, I'm living my authentic life. And by living my authentic life, I'm changing the reality um, for myself, the version of myself that is living that reality. And what that does is it allows others to feel that. Like you said, the senses, they get to feel that and they get an opportunity to live their most authentic life too. So really, how could I show up the best for me is taking that responsibility that everything that I do in my life is really my creation, you know, and
Yeah.
not getting pulled into the victimization of this, like what life tends to offer sometimes is like, oh, in a way, it's like we're really responsible for everything that we live. And we can buy into, oh, that's not good or this isn't good. But really, it's like if we can just turn it around, as Byron Katie says, and what feels good for me right now. So that's how I can show up for the world, is really staying authentic to that and allowing myself to hear that and communicate that with inside myself and see the reality that I'm creating at whatever vibration or frequency that is, and that's what I can give back to the world.
That's beautiful. And as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think we've really gotten this message across throughout this podcast, but I think for me, the feeling of like showing up in embodiment, like I've gone through this life, and what I'd like to share is that really being able to embody your truth as a human being, as whoever you came here to be, is the most incredible experience. And being true to yourself and really allowing yourself to live that truth is probably the most liberating thing. And so if I was to share that, it's like, show up in your truth, because that's so soft and it's so incredibly healing for your body and your mind. And that's what I would share, is really just that, show up for you, let yourself live in that softness, let go of the rigidity, the seriousness of this life, because it can pull us into that. Like, we can really be pulled into that, and just live your most authentic self.
That's beautiful. And I'd just like to thank you for giving up your precious time to be on the show and share your wonderful words of wisdom. And I'll put your social media handles and your website with the notes, and people can keep an eye out and follow you and get ready for your book launch, which I believe is in the fall. So thank you, dear Rhonda.
Beverley, thank you. It's an honor. I mean, I love our relationship. We've been in and out of our lives for so many years now. And I'm honored to be able to be here with you. And thank you for all you're doing, because, your presence has been, so strong in so many ways, and what you bring to people. And I really appreciate that, and have a lot of gratitude for all you've done and are doing even today. So thank you so much for having me here with you.
Thank you. And thank you for the lovely listeners supporting this show.